I think the challenge is to go through life doing something you don't love. That's hard. So, you can reimagine, reinvent yourself. Doesn't have to be by taking some crazy risk and starting a company, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you say, well, I want to do a different thing in my career, or I want to, join an early stage company because I'll learn how that works. That's all fine. I think the key is just be true to who you are. And we tell entrepreneurs the same thing. Be true to who you are as an entrepreneur. SoftBank is writing $100 million checks. You may or may not be that kind of entrepreneur, right? That has to go build a multi-billion-dollar company. We're totally fine if you want to go build a $10 million company and take less money. Be true to yourself. Don't build a company that's fueled by venture capital if that's not who you are. You can be a bootstrapper. So I think it's, it's getting into people's, who they really are.
Yeah.
That's so valuable in this type of work.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with whatever your next move is.
Hey, you guys. This is Jennifer Egbert with Mile High Modern, and I'm here today with my very good friend David Cohen, so I'm super nervous because I don't want to be a couple of goofballs, but we're going to be. So David Cohen is the co-founder of Techstars, which anybody who reads knows what that is. But you are basically a mentorship program.
Sure. Let's call it that.
What would you call it?
Right. We describe ourselves as the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed.
Right.
We're investing in 500 companies a year around the world, and then we surround them with about 10,000 mentors in the network. So it started here in Boulder, but it's pretty global at this point.
That's so crazy. So when did you guys start? Was it 2008?
2007, we ran the first accelerator program. So it's crazy, like 13 plus years. And now it's here in Boulder, and now we run them in 52 different places around the world.
That is wild. And so when you went in, what was your initial thought process in doing it? Like, where had you come from that catapulted you into like, okay, this is a necessary place? Do you need to tell a dad joke?
Probably at some point
okay,
I will.
All right, just check.
But I was going to hold it for a little bit later. I don't like to start with those.
We'll end with them.
The idea back then was, after having founded a couple companies and had one or two that worked and one that definitely failed, horribly. It was really, what could I do that sounds fun? Like, I want to create a world that I want to work in.
Yeah.
So, the idea was, what if we just brought some entrepreneurs here and we could invest a little bit of our own money in them and try to connect them into the network and help them succeed eventually, hopefully. And, we got lucky with that first group of 10 companies.
Was it 10?
Yeah, it's always 10. We do 10 everywhere that we operate. So 52 places, 520 a year today.
And you went and found Brad. I like your story of how you actually approached him. And
yeah. So this guy named Brad Feld, I had never met, but when I had this idea for Techstars, the first person I talked to was actually David Brown. He's my co-founder, and he's the CEO of the company, runs the operating aspects. I focus more on the investing aspects. But, we had this crazy idea, and I got a 15-minute meeting with Brad Feld, who is a very well-known venture capitalist, based here in Boulder, ostensibly, but he's spends a lot of time in other places too.
He's traveling.
And, I'd never met him, but I had read his blog, and I knew that he was a very good investor and, really thoughtful writer about the industry. So, reached out to get a meeting. I got a 15-minute meeting 4 months later. So, busy calendar. Yeah. 4 months later. I was like, oh, okay.
Which seems fast,
I'll take that meeting. Yeah. 15 minutes. I can do that.
Your life in 15-minute meetings.
And it was what he called a random day.
Okay.
So, he was taking 30 meetings back to back, 15 minutes each, all day. And I was random, right? So he met with me, and I said, hey, I'm an angel investor. I'm in SolidWorks with you here in town, which is one deal we had in common. I'm thinking about doing this thing called Techstars. Here's what it is. And 10 minutes into the meeting, Brad said, I'm in, as long as you're not a crook or a flake.
That is what I think about you all the time, is how flaky you are.
Yes. Well, he didn't know me.
No.
Once you get to know me, you realize I'm very flaky. But early on, you don't know that.
In the slightest.
So what did that mean? Brad said, I don't know you. Let's work together. I said, what do you mean you're in? Is this how venture capital works? I didn't know that you could invest 5 minutes into a meeting. right? And he's like, yeah, I'll invest, $25,000. I think I was putting up 100 and David Brown was putting up 100. It was a small budget, right? To get it going. And, eventually he would commit more as he got to know us, but he then, 5 minutes got 5 minutes back at the end of the meeting that he didn't have to spend, which he loved. Right. He still remembers that today. It's like 5 extra minutes in his life. But then he makes a phone call to the guy that would become the 4th co-founder, this guy named Jared Polis, who at the time...
Oh,
Yeah, this guy named Jared Polis. Who, of course, today is our governor, but, spent 5 terms in Congress. And but back then was...
Blue, what was it called?
Blue Mountain Arts, greeting cards. And he's the founder of proflowers.com and other stuff. That's one of the reasons I like him in government is because he's got that background of being an entrepreneur. But Brad called him up probably a couple days after we met with him and said, hey, Jared, I just met these 2 guys. I really like them. I'm investing some money in their new venture and you should invest too. And Jared said, okay, I'm in. What is it? In that order. I mean, he literally committed.
He trusted Brad.
Yeah, and that's what I started to learn, like, okay, these networks, right, very powerful. And then from there, we just built the Mentor Network and, started that first program in 2007, that accelerator.
Was Brad in Boulder at the time?
Yeah. Well, it was actually Louisville. He was over the old Chicago pizza restaurant in Louisville.
Oh, my gosh.
If you know where that is.
Yeah.
And then that was a firm called Mobius, which was SoftBank money that they were managing back then. But, today the founder group, which is here in Boulder.
Yep. So that's an interesting, I think that would be a really great insight for you to share that you just said, that networking element that is like really, I always call Boulder like the coffee shop handshake town. Yeah. Because it's like, excuse me, all these very dynamic people living here, and you have, because I'm in real estate and you have people moving here.
Are you in real estate?
I am, just FYI. And they, I often almost have to tell people, you know what, don't come in with that kind of attitude. There's a lot of amazing people here who have already done a lot of amazing things and they want to know you. Like people want to get, you know what I mean? So did you always see that was the element here? I mean, you went and found him because you knew he was here.
Yeah. Well, when I first met Brad, he had no reason to help at all.
Right.
Like I didn't know him. Right. And literally 10 minutes into a meeting, he was actually willing to help.
You're a really compelling.
Well, it's not that, as you can tell. It's not that I'm going to pitch someone and they're going to be amazed. Right. I had nothing. Right. But I had an
idea.
It was an idea. And he said, as long as you're not a crook or a flake, which I don't know yet, I'm in financially. So why would you do that? And we have a cultural value that we espouse around Techstars, which we didn't invent and we don't own, but we use it as a core value, and that's called give first.
Okay.
So if you go into any of our kitchens around the world, you see give first on the wall. That's what that is. It's just the willingness to actually be helpful to somebody without having to think about it transactionally. So if you're moving here to Boulder and you're trying to sort of plug into the community, my advice is always, just figure out how to help somebody.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. Reach out, say, hey, I have some background in this space. Who could I be helpful to? Yeah. And that's how you sort of give to get eventually, but not transactionally. Yeah. Right? It's, you get a reputation for engaging with people and sort of leaning into stuff. And then people think of you because it is a small town. Right?
Everybody knows everybody, right. Or they will eventually know something about you.
Right. And so, one of my early examples of that here is, a financial advisor that was willing to advise me early in my career that had no money, nothing, right. Just giving first and helping me out. And so now I'm still referring people to that person.
Right.
Yeah.
And which I think is what I see here over and over again. So wait, you said something and I just lost my,
because it was like 8 minutes
thread.
ago. Let me further distract you because you actually left this at my house. And James, I don't know.
It's my favorite Barbie.
These things literally just are always laying around my house. So I just want to make sure you got it back.
Thank you. You are a prince. These are a mainstay.
Do you have like 14 of them?
We have a whole box.
Okay.
Because the studio is the playroom. But we have a whole box of bodies.
And Raleigh was like, can you take that out of the house? Like, can you just, remove that?
James's
from
toys.
the house?
And yes, and my daughter.
So I brought it with me.
Likes a good Barbie. But it has to be fully articulated.
I think it still is.
Which is why I have a drawer full of hands as
Right.
well.
You wouldn't want a no-handed.
We have
Barbie.
lots of hands, lots of knees.
Yeah, that'd be
Oh
bad.
my God. Should we do our ASMR part? Things that I think I want to do a whole podcast like this.
Do you think people like have hair standing up on their arms?
I think it's supposed to be the back of their neck.
Oh.
That they do it, and they find it to be very soothing, apparently.
Okay.
I could get some paper to crinkle.
Do you have a Coke? I'd like to open a Coca-Cola.
Oh my God.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah, we need a can. Can you imagine?
This is a great podcast.
So
I love this.
mad. This is going to be
This is
awesome.
the best podcast ever.
Gosh, damn it. You said something that Brad was saying when you said give first. And I lost it, and I'll come back to it because it'll come back. You weren't always an angel investor.
No.
How'd you get there?
have had one job interview in my life.
Yeah, dude.
Also, I'm 1-0. So
You got the job?
I did. The job interview was after finishing school. I was studying computer science, finished school, and then, was applying for whatever random programmer job I could find. And it was in Orlando, and I went and interviewed for this job. And it was using a particular technology. It was called Paradox back in the day as a database. Borland for you geeks out there. And I didn't know anything about it, but the job description said, you got to know this thing. So I went to the bookstore the night before and I read all about this technology. And then I went to the interview and I pretended I knew anything about it because I didn't.
Sure.
I was like, oh yeah, I totally understand, how pivot tables work or whatever. And used all the buzzwords
You're like,
from
and
the
then I'll
book.
teach myself later.
Yeah. And I got the job. And, what I now know is that, if you're a good software engineer, you can learn any language. That's not the hard part. So, of course, I was not a good software engineer. I spent, 5 or 6, 7 years doing that, managing software engineers. Eventually, that company, hired me out of that job. So I didn't interview for it. They just said, we want you. And I built an ambulance dispatch system.
That's that thing you showed me, right? On the wall?
Probably.
At Customs?
Oh, no, that's...
You're like, I made that.
That was the defibrillator.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
get to that.
Okay.
This was an ambulance dispatch system, which was like software that could, when someone says, hey, I fell down or I broke my leg, someone broke their leg, an ambulance has to go there. So you got to get an address. You got to figure out the closest ambulance. You got to have ambulances standing by close to that scene.
Yeah.
So we made the software that did all that stuff, all the mapping systems. So if you see like, Royal Metro or Primark, running around town, that's actually our software that's controlling
That's so
that.
crazy.
So that was our first business that we created, David Brown and I.
Oh, no way.
And we've been creating businesses together ever since. Techstars is just our fourth one.
Wow.
But it's
All
serial
always
co-founder.
here, right?
Yeah.
Like you were here.
He's
Okay.
here. Yep.
And then?
And then eventually that company was bought by a company called Zoll. And that's who makes the defibrillators you were asking about.
Okay.
So this is a medical device manufacturer. They make machines that shock you and stop your heart. That's called defibrillation. Most people think that when you get shocked, it's actually
Starting your
heart. No, actually, it's like a reboot button on your computer. When you, it stops your heart and then your body sort of restarts the heart the right way. So there's some software in that device, which we wrote so that when the paramedics from the ambulance dispatch showed up, they could receive the data and integrate it into their record. So basically, lived in that world for a while, sold that company in 99, built a few other companies, one that failed. And that led me to the idea of Techstars, which was the most fun part, is just, actually the early stage and getting things going.
Well, and like you reinvented yourself.
Yeah, I had basically 4 careers is the way I think about it.
That's awesome.
Programmer, right? And then entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then angel investor and now venture capital.
Yeah. That is so crazy because I think maybe sometimes, there's a lot of people out there who are watching or would want to ask you questions like we get to, right? But like
The 4 people that are watching.
the 4 people that are watching.
They may have
how
questions.
many people are watching right now?
4.
4?
This is only the live version.
4.
We're going to get way more on the podcast.
Exactly. We're going to get 53. No.
Yeah. But these 4 really matter.
Do we have one? Maybe not.
Probably my mom. Hi, Mom.
15. Hi, you guys. So, but I think that idea of reinventing yourself can be really overwhelming to people. So what do you remember at all kind of like your thought process, or oh no, you're a high D like me. You just jump off the cliff.
Yeah, I like the risk, but I actually coach entrepreneurs on this today because, they'll exit a company and they have an identity crisis, right? We've seen hundreds of, companies get sold and they say, what do I do next? That was my whole identity,
Right.
And the coaching we usually give them is to try to think in 10-year blocks.
Okay.
Right. And then
10 people, 10 years.
Yeah.
15.
So I like 10. I'm a binary sort of round number guy. So, you if you can think about it in 10 years, you sort of have maybe 4 careers in a typical work life, 20s to 60s. And, I think what would you like to be 10 years from now and just jump off and go do that thing. And that's how I always thought about it. Like I loved programming until I was like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you have a lot of similar.
No, I can
jumps.
see like where my thing segues this way, and then it goes that way. And then.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're thinking about what's next for you, right? Like imagine yourself in 10 years, what would be fun to work on?
I know. Owning all those buildings.
You're on it.
I know. But I think that's interesting. So the identity crisis, are they frozen? I mean, are you guys mentoring in that area at all, in that arena, like after they're done and they move forward?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, when you're the first very early investor in a company, which is what we do, right? When we invest in all these companies, we're typically the first investor, the first believer. And it's typically like, 1 or 2 people and a dog and an idea. And they don't all have dogs. A lot of them do. And it's, they're literally trying to figure out who they are, what they want to build.
Yeah.
And often they end up building something different than they thought they would. So when it exits, you're still in that kind of coaching position, right?
Like it's
you've
your
been
baby.
You've been on the whole ride with them,
Yeah.
right? Like you saw them have all the ups and downs, and they tend to come back to you for kind of life coaching. So we do get that a lot. And we like to say, Techstars is for life. So once we invest in you, even though this company's done, you're part of that network forever. So that's why a lot of people are plugging into, additional things that we're working on. So, we like to see those founders coming back and doing other things in our network, helping a different portfolio company succeed.
And they're mentoring other people as well.
They do. They come back, they give back.
Which is really amazing.
Because they know this cultural value of give first. So they got mentorship from this community if they're here in Boulder. And that's 100 mentors that give to this activity. They don't ask for anything in return. Some of them might invest or whatever, but that next generation of mentors is born from the previous generation of entrepreneurs.
And you see
it's
them
powerful.
all over. Yeah. I mean, they're like, and I think they're so proud of it, Like
that is the thing I'm most proud about personally too, is watching like generations of give back of mentorship, because, everybody knows something more deeply than their peer, right? So everyone can be a mentor on some dimension of what they do. And that's the secret of, great entrepreneurial communities, of which Boulder is one.
Yeah. Do you feel like, it seems like, because I watched a bunch of your podcasts in the last couple of weeks, or, like the stuff on YouTube and stuff, and just knowing you, but like what occurs to me is there's like a super holistic part of this that isn't so like tech. And you know what I mean? That entrepreneurship seems to add like a major, amount of creativity that seems, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not, it's counterintuitive to what you would expect in the tech industry.
Yeah. I mean, we see a lot of entrepreneurs that just have a vision of the future, and it's not always tech. Right. Right.
It's like space cars. What is that thing that woman did at, that thing where she launched a rocket up into space, and then the taxi comes and gets the pod. And
yeah.
That was crazy.
The space tug.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a company that literally launches rockets, and then they pull a satellite to a different orbit. This is very deep tech. Actually, it's a very hard problem, obviously, to even get up there. But then you see others that are, completely, non-tech really. It's marketplace, plays, or, we have a company here in town called Wonder that's doing great, that is a marketplace for financing solar projects.
Oh, cool.
Right. There's really not a lot of tech other than they match the parties together. But, I think what we're trying to do is help the entrepreneur figure out uniquely what they want to bring to this world and why they're put on this earth to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's in the same space they were interested in, but they get to it by just, sort of getting the feedback and mentorship. And we don't care if it's tech or not. I mean, the name is Techstars, but
Right.
it's all over the map.
It's entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
It's like, that's so interesting. So do they have a little bit of an identity crisis when they realize like what they imagined isn't going where they thought it would go?
I would say it's usually the reverse. It's
Oh,
almost
really?
like an epiphany of like, something clicks in for them.
Cool.
Where, sometimes all you're doing is giving them permission
Yeah.
to do what they actually want to do.
Yeah.
They think it has to be cool and high tech and software, but actually it's the mission that's more important to them.
Yeah.
And when you give them the freedom to express it that way, it's almost like relief.
That's cool. That's so interesting. What are you reading right now? I always watch you reading. No, I don't watch you reading. I always see you reading.
You mean on the beach?
Well,
Because I just sit there and read. You're right.
You read, but you always have what are you reading right now?
At the moment, I'm actually in the middle of Homo Deus,
Yeah.
which is the sequel to another great book, but it's about how humanity is changing and shifting, and it's the future.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 2 books in the series, and I actually am going back and reading part of it because I remember how great it was.
Yeah.
Another one that I think I told you about somewhere that I read recently that really changed my thinking is called The Soul of Money. Really great book, which basically is you are what you spend.
Okay.
And that's what's shaping the world. And so,
Interesting.
it's also all about enough and the accumulation of wealth and how you spend it really being who you are. So
What was your most important point that you got out of that?
I think just, when you think about accumulating wealth, at some point you say, well, there's enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because why am I accumulating more? It's maybe to give it away, but I think of, sort of the give back to the community as one of the contributions. It's not necessarily money. It's just organizing the mentorship community here and in lots of other places around the world. I think it's super powerful. And, when I spend money on a vacation and going and sitting on the beach somewhere, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But when you really look at what all you're spending both your time and your money on, that shapes who you are and what will be the impact that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of the idea of, how much is enough coupled with the idea of how am I going to actually use that?
Yeah. Because I'm sure like there has to, you look at like Bezos or somebody like that, where it's like how many hundreds of billions of dollars.
Well, where's the spend, right? It says 10 billion on, climate change.
Yeah.
Right. Is the latest
Which
announcement.
shocked me.
It's cool. It's amazing.
Because he's not normally a philanthropic.
Well, so that's 8% or something of his net worth.
Right.
But it's $10 billion. Like when I hear the criticism of like, oh, it's only 8%.
It's $10 billion.
First of all, like a lot of it goes to taxes, right? Second of all, a lot of it goes to, whatever you're building in the world. But, take a step back. $10 billion. Like I just gave $10 billion to this cause. The problem with these things is, the pledge gets made, but we don't really have solutions for, in this case, say climate change. We run an accelerator with the Nature Conservancy to try to create more of those opportunities for that money to go somewhere. But that's part of now who he is. And that's a really cool thing that's being done.
I think so too. Like that was kind of knocked my socks off a little bit because it actually, he's a leader, a world leader in a way, right? And to, I think, lead by example, that's something really, I don't know.
A lot of people are going to follow that example.
I know, which is incredible.
And it's going to inspire a lot of people to try new things that we haven't tried before.
And open up new doors probably for a lot of entrepreneurs that might be going to Techstars. Hey, Jeff Crutcher. Okay, so we did get your question. And Jeff's question for you, David, was do you guys do accelerators in Montana, correct?
We do not currently have an accelerator in Montana, but we would love to.
Yeah.
So if you know of any leaders in the startup community, we'd love to have them reach out. Ooh. We do run Startup Weekend throughout Montana and in 600 cities around the world. That's a 3-day weekend experience of entrepreneurship where you can sort of learn if you want to do that, become an entrepreneur. So we run those through in Montana.
And where can they find that?
If you just go to startupweekend.org, or you just go to Techstars and click on Startup Weekend, you will see where those are happening all around Montana.
Okay, that's awesome. That is incredible, David. Thank you so much.
No problem, Jen. I'm always happy to answer questions from the audience.
We love the audience, actually. They keep us in line. Should I ask you a professional question? We were talking about during our break that you notice when you're interviewing people, and then when they're being interviewed, you're on. All of a sudden, you're on. And I think David and I and our significant others hang out 4 or 5 times a week.
Let's be clear. You and Jill hang out nonstop.
Jill and I hang out about every day.
Yes.
And so we know each other very well. It's kind of difficult for us not to go into just talking about
So I'm
nothing significant here.
I'm a huge introvert.
Yes, you're so introverted.
I can answer this question because this is what I do for work. Right. And you've never seen me do that before, right? So it's different, the work context.
Totally.
But it's not. It is.
But it's
authentic.
not fake.
It's authentic in that's my work personality.
Well, like you were saying, you don't see me work.
And I once in a while, I get. You never work. But I actually literally lean in when we're talking about this stuff because I love doing it.
Well, you can tell you're lit up about it. Yeah. That's the thing. And so and I think that's really cool when you were talking about I wanted to do something that was really important to me. And why I ask, because I think there's a lot of people who are in that time in their career, or if they're not in the beginning, they're in that space of it's got to evolve. I've gotten bored. I can't go any further, whatever it is. And how do you make that change? And how do you know? Because if you are a risk taker, and if somebody's not a risk taker, they're going to have to find a way, right?
Yeah, I think the key thing is, I don't have any judgment about whether you're a risk taker or not, right? I think the key is be yourself.
But it's easier.
Right? There are some people who, love sitting in a cubicle and writing code all day long.
And they're good at it.
Filling out TPS reports. Yep. That's fine.
On Saturdays.
Exactly. And on Sunday also. And, I think...
That was our Office Space reference. In case
totally
you don't know.
Cool if that's what you love doing. I think the challenge is to go through life doing something you don't love. That's hard. So, you can reimagine, reinvent yourself. Doesn't have to be by taking some crazy risk and starting a company, right? Yeah. Maybe you say, well, I want to do a different thing in my career, or I want to, join an early stage company because I'll learn how that works. That's all fine. I think the key is just be true to who you are. And we tell entrepreneurs the same thing. Be true to who you are as an entrepreneur. SoftBank is writing $100 million checks. You may or may not be that kind of entrepreneur, right? That has to go build a multi-billion-dollar company. We're totally fine if you want to go build a $10 million company and take less money. Be true to yourself. Don't build a company that's fueled by venture capital if that's not who you are. You can be a bootstrapper. So I think it's, it's getting into people's, who they really are. Yeah. That's so valuable in this type of work. Yeah. And I think that's true with whatever your next move is.
Yeah. Do you find, have you seen a real big, like a total shift in the initial Techstars group, that first 10 till now, that you recognize or remember?
Well, we did 10 companies in 2007. The outcome was that 5 of them were acquired. Okay. None of them were acquired for more than, $20 million, which is small in the grand scheme of company acquisitions. Right. 4 of them died, and 1 of them still going. Oh, wow. Right. So 13 years later, one's still going. So that's venture capital. You don't know how it's going to turn out. And the one that's still going is a pretty substantial company in LA. If they come back and those 10 from the first class mentor a current class and they've done it, it's really cool to watch. They would say, wow, these companies are so much farther along than we were when we started the Techstars
Well, because they were the nubile little...
And, I think back then... Nobody knew what the brand was or what it stood for. It didn't have any traction or success.
Was there anything else like it then?
Y Combinator is a competitor of ours that had existed for a year or two in the Bay Area. That was pretty new back then. So, today, if you looked at the class of 10 companies that are in Boulder right now or in Singapore or wherever, you would, I think those companies would say they're just a lot farther along than we were. We were just a couple of people with an idea. Now it's competitive to get into the program. Right. We offer a little more capital than we used to. Things like that. So you just see companies that are a bit further along. And we run a lot of programs for major corporations like Amazon, Ford, Barclays Bank, others like that. And that attracts entrepreneurs that are farther along too, because they want to know those companies.
So that's wild. So what do you find? Are they more, when you say further along, are they more sophisticated?
Just progress.
They have more capital already.
It might be that it's their second or third company instead of their first company that
Yep.
they're starting. It might be that they've already raised $500,000 or $1 million,
Yep.
in venture capital or angel capital. It's more though that, the product that they're working on is just a little farther along.
Yeah.
If I think back to that first class, 5 or 6 of them basically had nothing. Like, we like the people.
Yeah.
Did
you guys know them?
No, I would fly around from airport to airport and take meetings and
That's wild.
invite them to participate. Today we have,
Yeah.
an army of people that do that, but
yeah.
it's just that if you looked at the product that they're coming in with, it's like, oh, that's already pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's a known brand and it's more competitive. So that's a little different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I meant to ask you this earlier because you said it. So we're out of, me and my nonlinear thinking. Where do you see yourself in 20 years? I mean, let's say 10.
I would like to be breathing primarily.
Let's say
I'd like to keep as much hair as possible. I think this is a goal. It's not working.
Professionally.
Oh, professionally. So Techstars is the last thing I'll do professionally.
Okay.
I don't really have an interest in selling it or anything like that, although that could happen. I'd love to see.
You could do it forever.
I'll do it till I'm done. And I'm what I want to do is sort of work less over time. Like, I don't believe in retiring.
Yeah.
I want to retire while I'm working, which as you know, I do. Take our trips and have lots of fun.
We go on vacations together, just so you guys know. Like
With
our families,
yes.
David and me
Let's
and
be clear,
Sky
Jen.
and Jill and our kids
Yes.
go
The
on
kids are there.
vacations together.
Yes.
And
But you live while you're
David
working.
and I work the whole time.
You live while you're working.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd like to do is work less than I work now. I'd like to travel less than I travel now.
Travel less for work.
For work.
Yeah. Because you guys do some kick-ass travel as a family.
We try.
You do. Like, it's good stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we try. But, for work, I can literally wake up and I'm like, I know I'm in a Marriott because the bathroom is right there, but I don't remember what city I'm in.
Oh, geez, really?
And it's like, you're literally making the laps of the same, LA, New York.
I remember you one day, like, taking a meeting, flying out one day, 15-minute meeting, and flying back when you were saying that. And I was like...
I know which
Do you
meeting
want to
you're
talk
talking
about that meeting? We can't talk about that
meeting.
meeting.
That was very far away, and it was an hour. I got an hour meeting. But
was an hour?
I've literally flown, into London from here, gone to our demo day in London when I landed, and flown back the same night. So no hotels in London. And it gets old, right?
Right.
That sounds super cool, whatever. It's not.
It sounds exhausting.
It's no fun at all. That's just pure work.
Yeah.
And I think the fun part is the fun travel. But yeah, when I'm 60, I'll do a lot less of that.
Yeah.
Right? But I still want to do what I do.
Well, and I wonder how it will evolve, actually. You know what I mean? Like, where you will be. Which leads me to your mentorship manifesto.
If only I knew how it would evolve.
You probably mentor a lot in a different way, maybe. Or maybe teach.
Yeah. I think I would do
Like
more
be a
local.
professor, yeah.
Like, instead of doing it all over the world. And, I think it's trying to continue to help Techstars grow and have impact because, you can't do it all. So it's making sure you have great people that can do that. But
yeah. Finding a you, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, did you guys hear that? 10 years. No.
I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to do less.
I know you're not going to.
It might be that I only come to the board meetings or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll just drive people crazy with comments about what you should be doing without actually doing anything.
Way. Yeah. But do it and then you'll know nothing. And then, yeah. Well, okay. So I was listening to your mentor manifesto, and a question that I had is, what are some founder mistakes that you've found? That you've
How long is the show?
undug, right? Yeah.
I mean,
what are the biggies?
You literally see them all, but I think that the big ones that we often talk about that repeat over and over again, and we try to capture in books like Do More Faster, right? It's because we see them all the time. one is you're working on something that nobody needs or wants. You have this conviction that this has to exist, right?
Must be.
And you're ignoring all the data that's coming in, and you continue building this thing, and no one will pay you for it, but you continue building this thing, and no one will use it or give you feedback, but you continue building this thing, right? Like you just see that a lot. And the symptom is you run out of money because investors give up and whatever. But, the real problem is that, you're not following the data that's coming in as feedback. You just blindly believe.
Like it's that blind. Yeah.
Here's the problem with entrepreneurship is that once in a while, blind believers win. So, Zuckerberg won.
And they're who everybody hears about.
Zuckerberg won.
Yeah.
He was right. We needed another social network, even though we already had MySpace and 47 others.
Right.
We needed, Facebook.
Clearly it was,
right?
yeah.
We just didn't know it.
Right.
And everyone told him, nah, we don't need another one of those. But he had that vision. So I love entrepreneurship because there's no rules. Like you can't say that you're definitely wrong if no one's liking what you're doing until they do. So that's big thing number one is working on something people don't care about. Big thing number two is team. We as entrepreneurs often hire people that we think we can control or that, are like us, as opposed to hiring the best salesperson, hiring the best marketing person. In order to win, you've got to surround yourself with an amazing team.
Yeah.
You know this in what you do.
Yeah.
It's true in every business. Present company excluded, obviously. For those watching. Love you guys. But, I think team.
Yeah.
It's really true in entrepreneurship. You who your mentors are, who your investors are, who your board is, who your VPs are that you bring in to do certain jobs. They've got to be way better than you. And that's actually the hallmark of a successful entrepreneurial CEO is they will bring in someone who's way better than them on a particular area.
I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
They fail a lot when they don't do that.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you think, I wonder, probably now you don't, but did you notice a time when you didn't, or do you still try to chase the black swan?
You mean something that probably won't work and really swing for the fences as an investor? You like to have what we like to call portfolio theory.
Okay.
In our, yes, you take those chances where you say, hey, this has a 1% chance of working, but if it does, it changes the world.
Everything.
So, early on, for example, it's easy to point to the big ones, but like investing in Uber, right? And very, very early on when it had no cars on the road, like the vision from, that early founder, the first employee, was so compelling. This doesn't have a huge chance of working.
Yeah.
But, to put $50,000 out of a $5 million fund that we had into that company, to take a flyer,
that is
right?
So crazy.
That obviously turned out great.
Yeah.
We do a lot like that.
Yeah.
It's not all we do.
Yeah.
We'll also invest in something that seems pretty safe, right? Because you just never know. The safe one could be huge too.
Yeah.
So you're trying to build a portfolio that, has some of that and some more safe and some stuff in the middle.
Are people moving away from the term disruptor?
Now it's also innovator.
Innovator.
Yes.
We hear it in real estate all the time.
I just call them, we the words we've always struggled with are founder versus entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
I like both those words.
Yeah.
I try to use those words.
Yeah.
The founder is sort of like the cult of personality, like the Adam Newman of WeWork, right? In your world, about this WeWork thing, probably.
I might have heard of it.
Yeah. A little bit of drama there.
A wee bit.
But
who took over?
I don't know who the CEO is now. But I'm sure I'm offending whoever that is.
I know.
It's not Adam Newman. But, by the way, Adam does have a condo for sale, a 5-story penthouse.
I bet he does. Oh, I saw that. Yeah. Yep. And it's got the artwork in it. You should
contact Jen.
You should. Yeah. You should. And I can refer you to the realtor in the city. And the artwork is, oh God. Did you see the picture? I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I need art and I will get art. I don't know anything about the artist, but anyway, I digress.
But, it's that's what I mean, like this cult of personality. It's like really this whole company is this one person. And that's actually a pretty dangerous trend right now because the investors are only backing the one person. It's how influential they are. And I think it's a little bit toxic for the venture industry. Like you really have to look at the business behind that. And in WeWork's case, it obviously wasn't as strong as people thought.
Well, it feels like boiler rooms from the late 90s. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like to me. I mean, I was trading stocks back then for a private portfolio. And it was like one of those things. I remember Bob Presson, who I worked with, he was on the commodities desk, and I was just the assistant, but it was, he always would give me so much shit, right? Like, cause I was like 25 and I didn't know anything, and I still don't. And he would be like, where do you think this money's coming from? And I remember one day just thinking, you know what? No, it doesn't exist. Like it does not exist. I don't know. Cause I was looking at the syndicates and then the secondary markets and thinking, this doesn't make any sense that they're valuing and where they're valuing. And this is what this looks like now when I'm hearing about like Compass and WeWork, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're just pumping money into marketing.
Yeah, it's there are so many mega funds now that can write $100 million check. Look, that's we write $120,000 check to every startup. That's not a lot of money to go, create a lot of damage. Get you started. We can figure out if you're for real and you're doing the right things. But when you throw $100 million at somebody,
they can do anything for a few years.
They'll throw $1 billion at somebody now, right? And the challenge is like, if they don't have a fundamentally good business, they don't know what to do with that money, and they have to spend it because that's what the VC wants. So it's a bit of a toxic environment right now on the high end. It
looks like they're a bunch of drunks on a spending spree.
Yes,
is what it looks like.
It's the current modern equivalent of the Aeron chairs back in the 90s. Everybody had these beautiful chairs in their office,
Yeah. Well, and that seems like a really smart business model, to take small chunks everywhere and spread them way out rather than all eggs in one basket.
It's very diversified. Nobody's getting $100 million from us to go do those things. But, it turns out that that's actually enough to buy, a meaningful chunk of a startup. And the way we think about our model is every 20 companies we invest in, we own one company that's very diversified.
Right.
Because
totally.
We're about 5% of all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is what you totally talked to me about, which was really cool. I like the thing when I was watching an interview with you and Brad, and I think it was in November maybe, but you were talking about the listen as much as you talk.
From the Mentor Manifesto also. Yeah. I'm not doing that here because I imagine you want me to talk.
I actually do want you to talk. Okay. It really helps.
Checking.
It helps a ton.
I think, the worst mentor is the one who just talks at you. Like, you're like, here's our business. We sell mousetraps, right, in Canada. Well, let me just tell you everything I've ever discovered in my life, right? And you're like, you can't get a word in edgewise. So I think the Mentor Manifesto is really trying to say, here's the social norm of mentoring around Techstars. If you're talking more than half the time, you're not doing it right. Right?
Yeah.
You need to give your feedback and input, but you need to really understand what the questions are that you're mentoring on. So that's what that is.
Well, I think sometimes you have to actually coach people into asking questions.
Yeah, you're right. You find a lot of people that they just describe.
Yeah.
They'll tell you, here's how the business works or whatever, but they're not realizing who this mentor is and how they can help. So another big piece is for the founders, right, that are asking for help, know what the background of the person that's coming in is and how they might be able to help you.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Because there is always that question, like there could be, like somebody who doesn't know you, right? And sitting there and they're asking you like the superficial questions and you're getting just the baseline. And then what would be the thing, that would hit for them where all of a sudden it would open you up. You know what I mean?
I love when an entrepreneur comes in and says, I want to give you a brief background on my business, or they'll send you something ahead and they say, there's 3 things I really want to dig into with you because I know you had a background in public safety, right? I know you've seen a lot of companies and I want to understand, they just know what they want to talk about, what they want to get out of the meeting. Those are usually the entrepreneurs that do well, right? They know what they want to get out of something.
Yeah. And they're Socratic.
Well, hopefully the mentor is.
Yes.
At least because, if you're asking questions in both directions, but I think often the answer to the question is another question, right? Getting to the why of what's behind it. Yeah. So, if someone's asking you, well, is A better than B? Sometimes you say, well, what's behind that question? What's motivating you are those the only 2 choices? Right?
Totally.
And you get into things like that. So questions are always good.
That's good. That's actually really good. Everybody write that down.
Hold on a second.
Yep. Write it down, David. Don't forget that you said that. So I think right now I'm hearing it a lot, and it's funny. I think in real estate, because we negotiate so much, realtors are often like doing a lot of personality. What would it be like? We're doing a lot of the same kind of reading, really understanding people, understanding negotiation, understanding like how to read body language, all the things, right? And so the thing that comes up too is like a catchphrase I'm hearing all the time now is the failing forward. I'm sure you guys are talking about it constantly.
Failing forward meaning learn from what
your mistakes.
Yes.
So that's something that I think is very much in the what's the
vernacular, that thing. Yeah. I hear you.
What would you say are some of those big failures that you guys have seen that, you look back and you're like, thank God that happened?
Well, I mean,
that's weird that it turned out this way.
In the context of entrepreneurship, you have micro failures all the time, right?
Time.
Like, we actually say the unit of measurement is, learning, validated learning. And how do you learn without trying? You have to try, and you're going to fail a lot. You don't want the whole company to fail on a macro level, but on a micro level, you want to be failing constantly. So, people in our world, they say, failure's good. Sure, it's good until you have to shut your company down and tell your investors it's a zero, right? And then you're depressed. But I think failure is good in the sense that if you aren't actually trying it, you won't know if it's good or not. So you are moving forward by failing, I think.
Yeah.
The term you would hear in our world is more, sort of failure is good. Yeah. Which is idiotic, of course.
Well, it's a broad stroke.
Micro failure is good.
Yeah.
Because you learn.
And recognizing it. We're almost out of time. So one question that I do have is, what do you see is kind of the evolving, like what is the future for entrepreneurship? David, look into the future.
Let me just,
get your crystal ball.
Yes.
Let us know. Where do you see things going? Say the next 5 years.
I think that people are waking up, Philip McCarnan here in town?
Yeah.
Philip and we've been talking about this thing called One Last
I don't know
Startup.
him. I know
of him.
Yeah.
Well, he's on my podcast.
Hey, Philip.
Over at the Give First
David
podcast.
has an awesome podcast, you guys, by the way. It's awesome.
Anyway,
yes.
Local guy that I've gotten to know very well. We came up with this notion of One Last Startup because he does an event called One Last Talk, which is very powerful. People, this is the last talk you can ever give. Yeah. No one will ever hear from you again. What would you say? Mm-hmm. Well, we're trying to do the same thing with entrepreneurship. This is your one last startup. I don't care if you're 20 years old. If this was the last one you could ever do, what would it be? And people will answer that with very different answers. Right now I'm thinking about an ad tech startup that makes advertising 1% more efficient for advertising. Okay, cool. But not going to change the world, not going to make the world a better place, right? Mm-hmm. So we are seeing more and more entrepreneurs focusing on the big problems of the world, food, water, climate. Distribution, right? Climate, just the challenges of humanity. And if you think about someone like Travis Kalanick, who did great with Uber, right? What if he would have applied all of that smarts and all of that capital and all of that muscle to moving food around instead of moving people around? And he did Uber Eats or whatever. I'm not talking about that. There's plenty of food in the world. It's not in the right place. It's a logistical problem. So entrepreneurs more and more are now focusing on the bigger problems. And I think that's good, especially if we can get the younger generation to do it. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. It's nice to be in your playroom. Welcome to the playroom. And thank you for being in the playroom. You guys, we're wrapping it up. I think this could go on for a long time. Super informational, super fun. David Cohen, check out his podcast. What's your guys' podcast? It's called Give First. Give First. It's you and Brad. It is. We host it. And you host it, and you're interviewing each other sometimes. Usually we're interviewing an interesting other person, but sometimes we interview each other because we like to do that. They're interesting too. So awesome. Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me. All right.